So I'm going to ask one of my students again and friends to come on and talk about his experience. He was one of, his name is Dylan. He has a dog called Amos, who was also one of the Monday Nighters, and he was again a very similar story to Patricia, a first-time dog owner that got a Border Terrier, and all that flowed and followed from his experience. And I just want to just speak to him and invite him into this conversation for you guys to listen to some of his experiences, and hopefully it may resonate with you. So I'm going to add Dylan the spotlight. Dylan, there we go. Okay. So thank you. Good evening, Dylan. Thank you for joining. So, well, I'm loving the hair, Dylan.
I did it especially for you, Kamal.
So I'm going to jump straight in to the reason why you're here. Obviously, Dylan's helped me massively with this project as a sounding board for ideas, and as a person that had a reactive dog, or a dog that was deemed reactive. That's how we first met, and he's been instrumental in guiding the content of this course, and he's gave me some fantastic feedback about what someone in his position as a first-time dog owner would want to see and experience within a course if he could have his time again. So Dylan, just tell people a little bit about Amos, and obviously how we came to be, and obviously as a dog owner, how that went for you then.
Cool. Amos was my first dog, as you said. I'd grown up in a family who had owned cats and always wanted a dog, but waited because of work reasons until I was sort of settled with work and everything like that. Ended up with a Border Terrier because I'd seen them around. I liked the look of them, a bit like Patricia. It sort of fitted with my London lifestyle and things like that. Not a huge amount of thought about what it would be like having a Border Terrier in the city, but it was anyway. I ended up with Amos, and he was quite different to Patricia's experience in that Amos was what you might call overconfident. He was a type of highly wired, very, very excitable, rush up to dogs in the park and jump on them as his first reaction and things like that. So that was my sort of introduction to dog ownership. And it was hard work. We didn't really know how to handle it. So we went to training schools and things like that, which were great, but they sort of slightly ignored the core problem, really, or we felt that they did. And we never really understood the best way to handle this dog who would scream his head off in excited situations. Taking him to puppy class the first time was just, I'd never seen anything like it. He just turned into a whirling dervish. He wanted to get to everything. He wanted to get into everything. He was so vocal about it. So yeah, he was a handful. He was very responsive to training and things like this. So it sort of built towards him gradually. So through various sort of mishandling or sort of getting things wrong, or not knowing what we're doing really. He ended up sort of developing this slightly reactive tendencies, and things got worse. I tried a few different trainers and we tried different approaches, but again, nothing seemed to sort of be helping us out really. So then I got recommended by somebody to come and see you, and I think the first time you saw Amos would have been, we met up and did a
lesson, didn't we?
Yeah, we did a lesson, but you got him out with your dogs. And of course, in that instance, I think Amos was brilliant. He was aware of the dogs, but you didn't see any problems, as in he didn't kick off or anything like that. And that was quite typical of Amos. He could be absolutely fine, but then a dog pulling towards him or anything like that would really trigger him, and he would just go into hyperdrive. So yeah.
And I think a lot of what you and Patricia have shared are very common themes with people that have reactive dogs. So that Jekyll and Hyde personality, the one dog that you have in certain situations and the dog that you have in other situations are totally alien. The two things are like as if you've got two independent dogs, identical twins. One's the nice twin and one's the problematic twin, and it's knowing how to deal with that. And as the frustration sometimes could be is that, you know, people love their dogs and they care deeply and they want their dogs to be shown in the best light, but often because they're not the dogs are misunderstood, there's that stigma again, and there's that, you know, how do I sort this problem out? And often there's a it's not, I suppose there's a lack of understanding of the, like you say, the core root of the problem. With he was frightened by the situation. He would get worried, and rather than trying to deal with him lunging and barking, let's build his confidence up. Let's get him so that he's in a, you know, a happier, more buoyant dog around other dogs and so forth. Yeah
Absolutely. I think a big problem is that in the park or everywhere, there's 101 opinions about what you should do, you know. And I think you touched upon this with Patricia. Everybody will say, oh, I wouldn't stand for that, and we would do this and go to this trainer because he'll really sort that out. And you sort of struggling with the dog, you'll be sort of like, oh yeah, that'd be amazing, and you run off and try something. And so it's tough. But it can be hard work, especially for first timers. You know, I think that's a big point. You know, I've got quite, you know, my other dog Edie's quite a handful as well, but in a different way. But I've learned so much from Amos that, you know, I feel, well, she's not anything like as reactive. She still has her moments that are interesting, but it's a different way of, with the experience of Amos, handling a second dog's much better.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously there's, you know, you've done an amazing job with Amos and you know, creating his focus. And Dylan came to originally my pet training class, and then he got hooked into the prospect of training more for competitive obedience, and it's now largely immersed his whole world in that. He's got a second dog who is now training with that intention of doing dog sports. Amos went to obedience shows and he competed really successfully. You know, he did amazingly well. You know, he's a border terrier. He's an unconventional breed of dog. He's not what you would normally see in obedience circles, and yet he did amazingly well. But greater than that, he went from being the problem child to now, like, you know, we joke about Dylan's partner, like almost using it to show off to her friends about how
she's just sitting over there.
Is she? Oh, okay. We love Linda. She's the best. We know she really trained Amos, but it was at one point it's that dynamic, and it's that, I think that it's understanding that when the dog is problematic, it can actually really create that issue. It can sort of have a ripple effect to other areas, can't it? You know, it really becomes like, oh, it's the problem dog, etc. And I think that's what, again, professionals need to be aware of about helping them and be compassionate towards people when they're in that situation. So from a dog owner point of view, what would you say were the things that you know, that we did with him that were really impactful, that changed the way in which the dog behaved? And what was the key things that you would say and share with people?
I think the main thing was coming to a class that wasn't stressing about it or wasn't telling us what he was doing wrong or that he shouldn't be doing this and things like that. I think you know, the pet dog class had a variety of breeds and all that sort of thing. So there was, you know, potential for him to kick off at certain dogs. And he would have his moments, but you would help me sort of say, it's fine, you know, it's a bit too close, so give him some more space, or all those sorts of things. And fairly quickly, Amos, I mean, the focus of doing the training in that environment helped. And so it gave him something to do. So it got his focus on me and all that sort of stuff. That really helped. And I think it was just exposure and sort of repeated exposure and gaining the confidence on how to deal with it, that it wasn't a crisis, that it wasn't necessarily going to keep getting worse and worse and worse, which is part of what it felt like. You know, it was, okay, it's not perfect, but we can work on it and it will get better. I think that was one of the big things, is this sort of sense that it was going to get better. And then, you know, so moving on to the Monday nighters, walking in with shepherds and Rotties and Mari's giant schnauzers and all that lot. You know, I would have walked in. Well, I think we probably did walk in and he probably kicked off a couple of times, but over a period of not that long, he got so much better. And, you know, I wouldn't have believed that before. So
I think that's a really valid point that you make, in that, you know, my what I offer to people and suggest is, don't just hide away from dealing with those problems, and let's, build that layers of confidence so that your dog can cope in those situations which you may previously have perceived as challenging. The key things that I think that we really worked on with you was giving you the skills and giving you the confidence and giving you core behaviors that you could fall on and utilize. So for example, focus was a massive thing, like getting him very focused on you, teaching really, really good understanding of sit, down, recall cues so that you could fall back on those. Often when you have a dog that's reactive or deep problem behavior that's deemed reactive, there's that sense of being out of control, which then makes you feel vulnerable and then creates that anxiety within you, which can then escalate and make the problem seem 100 times worse than it probably really is. But that feeling is valid in that moment because you're feeling deeply overwhelmed by the situation. How I perceive reactivity and overcoming it is equipping the handler, owner, guardian with the skills of which they can navigate situations which they normally would be overwhelmed by, both by also giving them dog training skills, but also giving them skills for themselves that they can work on to build their confidence. I would say one of the things that I worked on with certainly Patricia and Dylan was giving them confidence. Like, you can do it, it'll be fine, we'll manage the situation, giving them that feedback to say, and equipping them with skills, in mental skills almost, and like to be able to say, okay, in this situation, let's slow things down, stop rushing, create distance, take your time, etc., etc. And if you really can't, just remove yourself, just take the dog on a scenic route, take the long route, take an alternative path, and therefore, avoid the situation rather than trying to go head on with it. But then in the same vein, okay, let's come back and revisit that. Let's set you up for success. Let's break it down. And that's the approach that I feel is really, really effective with getting people to move their dogs forward and creating confidence with them. Yeah, great points, Dylan. I mean, really, really appreciate you.
It was having something to do or learning what you could do in that situation meant that you can handle it with confidence, or more confidence than I don't know what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And giving the handler, the owner, the skills. I'm just reading some of the comments about some of the things that make it really, really great. The comments here, I'm just glancing over on my phone, so I'm not just disconnecting with Dylan, but it's how the comments that Dylan and Patricia have made have really resonated with, hit a nerve with people, and that this isn't just, Dylan's not unique in his experience. Patricia wasn't unique in her experience. This is something that a lot of people feel, and it's giving them, that's what the intention of Relabelling Reactivity is, to give people the tools of which they can help their dogs and therefore help themselves and help the dogs. This has been a massive project, a real passion project, I should say. And actually, I bounced this idea off Dylan when it first was something I was thinking about. I felt like there was definitely a lack of knowledge and lack of understanding about how to effectively help people with their dogs. And not just, like by managing them constantly, where, you have to have these management protocols. And there is absolutely a time and place for management. I'm not belittling management. There's always going to be a place for management. But what we want to try and do is manage the absolute minimum we have to, so that we can live this full life, where we can take our dog to the public park, where we can take them as a family member when we go away on trips abroad, or on a holiday or whatever, and we see other dogs, or we take them to the beach and we live that fantastic life. And that's what I want for everybody that is watching this at home and is considering joining this course. Dylan, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Fantastic input, and again, thank you for all your help with being part of this process. So